Let's let it connect first. All right, take it away.
Just 1 second. There we go. Okay. Good morning and welcome to another Taidu Studios live stream. We talk about everything you always wanted to know about Shakuhachi, but were afraid to ask. Let's meet our contestants. We are joined this morning by our returning champion, Sean Taidu Head, your licensed Shakuhachi instructor, and Linus Yume Callahan, freelance Santa Claus and kindergarten teacher. Say Ohio, Sensei.
Ohio. What an intro.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today, but before we get started, I just wanted to share a piece of news that didn't make the headlines. And it's the kind of like feel good story that we need right now, in the light of everything that's going on in the world. Um, I received an email yesterday notifying me that I have been paroled from Facebook jail. After being locked out since January, um, Facebook sent me an email saying, your page has been approved due to your appeal. I never was able to appeal because the appeal process they presented to me was actually not available to me because I couldn't log into the account they said was mine. But nevertheless, I have no idea why, but both my personal page and my Shakuhachi page have been reactivated as of yesterday. So I know those of you who are dying to get on my Facebook page and yell at me for talking over Sean, you can do that now.
They can also do that in the Discord.
They could do that in the Discord, and I've actually am prepared today with the necessary links to make that possible for them.
There we go.
If I can just get into the live stream now.
I beat you to it because I just put in the thing for the Discord. See how fast that is?
Okay. You know what? I'm going to put it into just to prove that I can.
There we go. I'm very proud of you. Very proud of you. There's a scene in the TV series Suits where Louis Litt goes through and does everybody's work one night. And they said the reason why we get paid more than you and all this stuff is because that we can do your goddamn work better than you, faster than you. I don't need this shit. And stuff like.
Yeah, it always makes me feel bad when you refer to me as the producer. I'm like, I don't produce anything. I produce a lot of crosstalk when we talk over each other. That's my main production.
Oh, but that's needed. It's necessary. All right. So you said that we have some questions on doc. Of course, the live chat's always open for you to ask questions, but we do have some interesting questions lined up today that we've sourced from a variety of sources. You like how I use the same word twice?
Well, do you want to talk about the first two, the big ones, or do you want to talk about the little ones first? Like we could talk about the odd size flutes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we can go backwards. I think that's fine. So,
okay.
Yeah, let's do the small things first, and then we'll get big news later. We can kind of sit on that for the rest of the live stream unless there's questions that popped up. So that sounds good to me.
All right. Cool. So those of you who are following the channel closely will know that Taidu put up a video about odd-sized flutes.
Yep.
And got a selection of Yozans in that are pretty unique sizes. And from a 1-3, well, I forget. I was so blown away by the 1-3 that I forget what else you got.
1-3, 1-4, 1-5, 1-7, 1-9, 2-1.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not sizes that people are always looking for, but some amazing flutes in that group.
Yeah.
Notably, the 1-3 is just, that flute is just magic.
Yeah, that flute is really quite something. And of course, all of those flutes are available up on the website right now as well. So you can go to that link and check those out so you know what we're talking about. And and also don't forget that you can actually, on all these flutes, you can get 10% off. And you can get 10% off of them by using the promo code OddSizeLove. So make sure you check those out.
Yeah, and I am sort of known amongst our studio as a person who has a real soft spot for the the smaller flutes. And that 1.3, I'm going to go ahead and say that 1.3 is the best small flute I've ever played. And not that I've played a ton of them, but I have played quite a few, like from the 1.4 to 1.6 size. And that
Mhm.
1.3 is, God, it's incredible.
Yeah.
To have a small flute that's that nimble in the third octave is pretty impressive.
Yeah, when I played it for one of my other students, and I was, I went everything from like like the Jishi flute. I mean, it's the Jishi pieces, the Kumoi Jishi, Azuma Jishi, Shishi, and other pieces like that, just sound unbelievably good on it. Like it's an incredible flute. When I first played it, I part of me really considered. I was like, "Mm, I might keep this one for myself." I really, really considered it heavily. So, and still am.
Yeah,
It still am because like, but the thing is that on the Jishi stuff, like when I play those sort of pieces, usually my 1.6 is fine. It does the job for me. And like
right.
getting like the sound colors that I want to have for those pieces. But and it's a little bit of a misnomer, I suppose, to call it the odd size flutes because they're not really odd in the sense that it's just not a 1.8, right? Because typically it's just basically what pieces are most composed for in contemporary music. So contemporary music tends to favor the 1.6 and the 1.8 because they're usually the standardized sizes. But when it comes to honkyoku, there is no standard of that. Now, some schools and some traditions will say, oh, typically, you play this on a 1.9 or you play this on a 2.0. Like Kimpuryu players, a lot of them play 2.0s. Like old style Kimpuryu is 2.0, which is not even really our modern 2.0. It's like in between the modern 1.9 and the modern 2.0. And then like
Mhm.
they'll say at Myoanji, they'll say that the most common size or standard size is 1.9. And then you go to a different school and you get a different size. So there isn't even that sort of standard a long time ago. But the reason why I call it that is just because modern compositions of the 20th century tend to favor 1.6 and 2.0. But I can name you three pieces that utilize a 2.1. So you're not always just stuck on those. And like even in some of the pieces that I've been uploading recently, I did a piece Kaze no Uta. That is actually originally for a 2.1, but I made an arrangement of it on the 2.0 because I like the sound of the 2.0 the most on that flute or with that piece. That piece I think sounds the best on a 2.0.
Yeah, the whole idea that these flutes are specific to certain repertoire is something that it's always bothered me.
Mm,
Um, Honkyoku on small flutes, uh, you know, traditionally, in my experience with small flutes, it is
hmm
hard, for example, to get a big roaring mariaki on a really small flute.
yeah,
But there are exceptions to the rule. Like that 1.3 actually has a pretty nice Mariaki.
yeah, it does.
And it's also hard, some people will say, for your Otsu register to be warm and round and that sort of thing. That small flutes tend to sound kind of, I don't know, too shrill, too bright.
Yeah, but
And I
though
didn't feel that was the case with that flute at all.
I didn't feel that was the case with any of the 1.3, the 1.4, or the 1.5. I didn't think any of that was the case for any of those. And I actually thought the 1.5 was really impressive of a flute too, just because of it's a really dense piece of bamboo. And it actually had a very nice lower register.
Yeah, and I think that we have at the moment it is very trendy to lean towards the bigger flutes, and I think a lot of guys, especially their second flute purchase is they got a 1.8 and they're learning, and then their second flute purchase is a 2.6 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
They
hmm
want, and I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for your development. I really like strongly encourage my students if they're going to get a second flute, like your second flute should either be something that you can take outside and not cry if you drop it,
hmm
or a 1.6.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a really good, I think that's a good assessment of it because again, the number one flute that's used after the 1.8 is the 1.6. And
Yeah.
just to give you an example of it, all right, of what I mean by this, um, here are some of the modern compositions that I teach and that are most popular in Japan. So Harunoumi, that's a 1.6.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Mutsuraboshi, that's a 1.6. If you play the piece, what is that piece I'm thinking of right now? That, of course, as soon as I was about ready to give a list, Kibitaki no Uta by Miyata Kohachiro. That's also a
Mm.
1.6. Kishi Renmen, which is a piece by Yoshizaki, that's also on a 1.6. And the list goes on, right? You can keep going and adding more of those pieces, and they utilize the 1.6. It has a brighter tone to it, and it's a lot more punchy, so people can hear the shakuhachi, and it does really well collaborating with other instruments.
Yeah. And one of the issues with the smaller flutes for honkyoku is that it's just a natural human tendency when you play a smaller flute with a higher range, you have the natural tendency to play a little bit faster
Yeah.
and move through things a little quicker. So it makes honkyoku not quite as long and somber, which I get that that's not ideal, but there are some honkyoku that could go faster. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course there is. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that are I think that's a big misunderstanding of Honkyoku, that everything has to be slow and labored. Like, not everything is working in the rice paddy field, right?
Right.
There's variation in Japanese life. So,
Yeah. And I like to play. I mean, I don't often play Hankyoku on 1.4, but like I think I used my 1.5. During
mhm.
like in my Jun Shihan recital, I played a piece of Hankyoku on 1.5,
Mm.
and I thought it went pretty well.
No.
It fits
No,
pretty
yeah.
nicely.
I think it's just fine. All right. Well, so if you guys are interested in those, go ahead and check out that video of the review video, and then also check out the link for those flutes that are for sale. So, what do we else do we have on dock?
All right. The other question that's been coming up a little bit is about the festival, the upcoming festival this October. So, how are things shaping up with the
Yes.
festival?
So the third annual Shakuhachi Festival, Taibo Festival, with myself, Taidu, and Hoko Belando. We're basically everything's doing really well. We have the dates picked, and the hotel is set. I do have to go up and talk to them pretty soon, just to actually make some reservations for those days, because you can't make reservations too far out, because right, what are we in right now? We're in May, so you still have the rest of
Yeah.
June, July, August, September, October, November. We still 6 months out, so I do want to make some preliminary bookings. Like, I know we're going to use at least 10 rooms, so I want to get those 10 rooms and have those booked up and ready to go, and then add as need be. But we have a fairly good base of students who are coming already, and we have a couple of people who are just not quite 100% sure yet, but it looks like it's going to shape up to be a pretty nice size festival. Now, if you are on the membership, by the way, of this Tidy Studio, you are also invited to it. So, non-student, we don't open this one up to the public, not yet. We'll have to do a few more before that actually happens. But for example, if your name is Eric Dimalanta, you are invited to this festival. So if you guys if you guys are interested in coming to the festival, or joining us, you can reach out to Linus on Discord, and he'll be more than happy to give you information about it, and what's going on with it. But yeah, everything, all the stuff in terms of getting people who are going to come here, we have really exciting stuff that's happening. Let me pull up uh, the festival thing, like what we're actually going to be doing, because at least I can talk about that, and I think that would give people an idea of what's actually going to be happening there. Because uh, at the festivals, what I try to do is I try to offer something that's different than anything anybody else is ever going to offer at their own festivals. So This time at the Taibo Festival, we're gonna have myself and Nick teaching a bunch of classes. So that's pretty much normal. Like when we're gonna be doing some repeat courses, which is on the fundamentals of technique. Nick will be teaching a Myowan piece. I'll be teaching a piece as well, and we'll also have a class on the modes of shakuhachi. We'll have a class on
That's
we'll have a class on making shakuhachi, and we will have a class on hitayogiri. And a couple other things that we're going to be having that are so there are a couple things that are the same. So we'll have our calligraphy and shakuhachi course. We're going to have the tea ceremony. We'll have a koto and shamisen master class. We're going to go hiking with Jonan, except it's going to be longer. And yeah, for those who don't know, the last hike we did was 6 hours. So, but anyways, the one we have a couple things that are gonna be new this year. A couple things that are new are we're gonna have another guest shakuhachi teacher come out, and he'll be teaching and giving us an introduction on Ueda Ryu. And then we will also have a new class which is on the Manyoshu, and they're on the classical poems of Nara, and we'll learn about how they were sung and done and all that kind of stuff. So, concert at the end as usual. And the one thing that's really nice about this particular event is that it's going to be held at my house. So it's going to have a lot more freedom where we don't have to say, oh well, the school says that we have to do this, or the location that we're at says we can't do that. No, it's I get to say what we can and can't do, and pretty much everything's going to be okay. We're going to do whatever we want to do because I own the place.
That's pretty cool. And it's the first festival in Nara was a really wonderful experience.
Hmm.
But we were a little hemmed in by the fact that the hotel we were staying at had some fairly stringent rules about when and where we could play.
Yes.
And we can go to Sean's house, and you can go off in on Sean's property and honk all you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Make all the noise you like. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it because I like the idea of I'm going to go to a festival, but I'm also going to sleep in my bed every night. So that's
Oh
kind of cool.
yeah, because you're super close by, but you have to get up early
Yeah.
every single day to come and take everybody by bus. So your
Yeah,
job.
and we're planning on doing Robuki every morning, bright and early.
Yeah, by the train station.
So
So when you guys do your rows, it
yeah,
should be like the train, right?
yeah. I think that the for those who are sort of neurotic the way I am about planning things out, just so you know, the festival is now 151 days away. 151 days and counting. So if you need to get in shape for that long hike, you can start today, and you will be a virtual Olympian by
Yeah.
the time we are ready to kick off.
Yeah, and just to be sure, if you guys do want more information about it, you can email me through my website, taidushakuhachi.com. Or you can
Yes.
you can get us you can get connected with us at the Discord link, and you can reach out to Linus for more information on it if you're interested in joining the festival. Okay,
Yeah.
I think that covers that. And just to be sure that we actually get to this, there we did play something today.
Played some Shakuhachi
Yeah,
today.
just,
Nice.
just got to make sure we at least as long as we play one note.
All right. So we've actually had a lot of recitals in
Yeah,
the studio of late. I feel like every weekend there's a recital of some sort.
yeah.
And
It comes in
so
seasons.
congratulations. Sorry, go ahead, Sensei.
No, I just said it comes in seasons.
Yes. Okay. So congratulations to the new Okadens and Jun Shihan out there. Some This led me to think about the recital tradition. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of people outside the music world, you hear the word recital, you think of that terrible Sunday afternoon where all the parents come to the piano teacher's house and you have to sit through 16 or 18 renditions of Mary Had a Little Lamb uh, on a baby grand piano with like a 5-year old on the on the on the bench. Um, and that's not what we're talking about. The recitals here are kind of a different. It's a different feel, and I just thought maybe this would be a good time to talk about kind of what your philosophy is about recitals. Like, what are the benefits of a recital, both for the student and for other studio members, and why we have recitals built into our repertoire.
Yeah, so we do it a little bit differently. And so let's talk about just the recital first and like what how I view it. I think that in our school we highlight performance, right? That we are making music, we are making it so that people listen to it and enjoy it, and so that's where I have the idea of putting in the recital. Now, I didn't have any sort of recital requirements when I did any of this stuff, right? I didn't There was no performance that was necessary for me to, get an Okuden or Junshihan or whatever. It was on basis on completing the pieces and learning about the pieces. Learn about the pieces and complete the pieces. And then that would be what was brought you up to that level or not. Like you would receive that menkyo. Um for me, one of the things that was really impactful for me when I was doing it is that when you compare what Shoden is, like that beginning teaching, I remember talking to Yozan and other Japanese teachers, like, what do you guys categorize as Shoden? It's like if you can play all of the basic notes, like the Rotsude Chidi in the lower octave and the upper octave, plus a couple of pieces. I think it's like 5 or 6 pieces. That's Shoden.
Mm,
Yeah, and so it's like, well, I don't really think that that's actually a beginner. Like a beginner is actually somebody who has all of the absolute essentials down, right? So they can play all the road to Ichiro. They know how to do Sumeri, Himeri, and they know how to count and read the music and play a variety of different styles, but it might not be correct, right? The Sumeri might still be really sharp or whatever, and so on. So I have my own little envision, like what Shoden is, and I push it a lot farther than what it normally goes. Same thing with Shuden and Okuden, and that's where the Okuden comes in. If Okuden, my image is that that's the deep teachings. So you already know how to play all the notes very well. You know how to read all these pieces. You can play advanced works, and now you should be able to start interpreting. So because you're able to
mm,
interpret, that's when you're ready to do a concert. So at the end of the Okuden, which is about 3 years, you should be able to begin the interpretive process. And then as you're working through Jun Shihan, that's part of that is to develop that skill set. You develop more technique, you develop more expression in your playing, you become better in terms of even your tone production and so on and so forth. And then you have requirements to actually start teaching. So we have those students do master classes and teach as a part of in the studio. So those kind of Discord montage things that you're seeing, those are people who are either Jun Shihans or en route to being a Jun Shihan, and they're teaching to learn how to teach and get better at it, and so on and so forth. They're finding their own students and stuff like that, and then they do a concert at the Jun Shihan level as well. So that's kind of what that
so
is. Hmm.
it's yeah. So I think what you're saying is that there is a rubric of sorts that at each level that has to be met, and I'm finding it. I find it really interesting that this kind of leads into our other question. Is that there are some people out there, in my wandering around on the internet, where I've heard a lot of people talking about the topic of menkyo or
Yeah,
licensing, and the idea that there seems to be some sort of, and it's very Western. I never hear this from a person in Japan. It's always the folks that are studying from the Western world saying, I don't feel that I need Menkyo, or I don't understand why Menkyo exists, or why I would want that. And
okay. Well,
as
then
a someone who did martial arts for years, I mean, I've never met anyone in a martial arts studio who says, "Yeah, no, I'm going to come and I'm going to sweat and do the push-ups and I'm going to take the classes and take the lumps of sparring, but I don't want a new belt."
mm. Well,
It
I
just
mean,
doesn't make sense
it,
to me.
then that a college degree doesn't make sense, right? An associate's degree
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. Your GED or your high school diploma doesn't make sense either, then, because it's the same thing. And, it's
Yeah.
that high school degree or the diploma grants you permission further into the education system. with
Right.
very rare exception that you may not have that, but you have a GED, which is an equivalent of it. But it's a permissive paper that allows you then to continue on into higher education, and that bachelor's degree gives you permission and of the ability to pursue to higher education as in a master's. Now, a master's is one of the only degrees that you could skip. And then you could skip that and do a PhD right away, or you can do a combined both of them, right? But though
Right.
there is that sort of system, and those things have meaning and they have weight. Now, if
Yeah.
now here's the argument for it, and I think that this is a good argument against it, and I think that both in the Japanese system and in the Western systems, these have been played down. People are handed out PhDs way too easily, and people are it depends on the university, right? And then so universities or schools then start to get bad rep, and then we say if you have a PhD from there, it's meaningless because they hand them out like hotcakes. And
Right.
the same thing can happen in the Japanese world. And I'm there. Look, it doesn't take that long to get into certain groups and to talk to certain people to say that they that's like a it's a menkyo mill. It's just handing them out like nonstop to people in order to get money. And that's yeah, that's a fair criticism of it. I think that that's absolutely a fair criticism, and one that's worthy of it, because I think that even in our college systems in the West, it's the same thing. There's a lot of people who are admitted into universities that really they shouldn't be there, not because they're not deserving of it, but it's because it's not a fit. But
Right.
they're so caring about having the money over a quality student and actually being able to help somebody. So it's more on the face of the university or of the individual teacher, that if they're doing it wrong, if they're abusing that system, then it loses its value. So I think the same thing happens in the martial arts. They just keep adding belts because there used to not be that many belts. There used to be like four. Jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu still keeps the standard, like the classical system, right? It's like
Right.
white, green, blue, brown, black, right? It's just like only the five levels, which is the same thing as Shoden, Chuden, Okuden, Junshihan, Shihan, right? And then
Yeah.
after that, it depends. Some people consider Shihan like the terminal degree, and then other people have a different one after that, like a Dai Shihan, Meo Dai Shihan, and so on. Like the Kinko Ryu system has more. So does the Tozan Ryu. They have more. They have Dai Shihan, Chikuritsu Dai Shihan. Myowan just has the Menkyo Kaiden, which means license of total transmission. And so
Yeah.
that means that you have like full authority to teach all of the pieces and hand out your own, menkyo as well. So it's not like it's just a one size fits all and that's it, whatever. There's also other types of things. So some schools have an okuiri, which is like an introduction certificate where you pay just to be. It's like it's like if you join a gym and they have $100 entrance
Mm.
fee, and then after that it's $9 every month. That $100 entrance fee, that's the okuiri.
Ah.
Or if you enter in a specific role into an organization, that's called a mokuroku, and that's an official role inside of that. And there's also like gomokuroku, there is a shomokuroku, and all these other different variation things. But it's a part of this like this grading system that they use inside traditional Japanese arts. All that being said, it is something that's very worthwhile to have, because it does help another person understand where you are in your shakuhachi journey. What's been there? Like, what have you learned, and what do you know? So it's easier to engage in a conversation about the things that they're saying, like in whatever. So if you have two okudens, they're gonna really hit it off because they're working on a lot of the same material. They've gone through a lot of the same things that a shoden wouldn't understand, but a junshihan would.
Right.
So it,
Right.
yeah,
And well, I think too. There's a uh, comparing it to the Western educational system. We do have a tendency, especially at the undergrad level, up to your bachelor's degree, to view that bachelor's degree almost as a time in grade kind of award rather than an award that's based upon your competencies.
yeah,
Like, did you actually learn anything in college? No, but I was there for over 4 years, therefore I get a BA.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
and that's a real problem. And also the fact that the Western education system, liberal art, was originally, the intent of like all the way back to the earliest days of universities. The intent was to create better human beings, not to create job certification.
Hmm.
And that's sort of the problem in Western education now, is that most colleges are no longer actually doing the original intent of colleges. They are now more vocational training
Yeah,
than they are sort of training you to think.
sure.
And so the way I see that mapping onto the Shakuhachi thing is that, yes, the licenses are to some extent a vocational thing, because you're demonstrating competency, a certain rubric of skills,
Yep.
to in order to earn that Menkyo. So in a lot of ways, it's almost like the bonding and ranking system of like people in the trades. It's almost like
Hmm.
electricians.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're an apprentice, and then you're a journeyman, and then you're a master electrician. And you want the master electrician to be the guy that wires your house, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, who did the
and
wiring in
there's some
this
interesting
house?
comparisons.
Yeah, who did the wiring in this house? Oh, my nephew. He's a very handy man. Well, when did his house burn down? About 2 years ago. Wait a minute. How did you know his house burned down?
I love that. I love that video.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
and
great video.
well, there's definitely some truth to that. In the martial arts as well. We certainly in the martial arts have seen a lot of quote fake masters, right?
Yes.
Guys that claim to be super amazing. This is particularly a thing that's happening in the Chinese martial arts right now. There's these guys that are claiming to be Wing Chun masters, or claiming to be masters of one of the softer styles. And I forget the guy's name. He's a older guy. He's sort of past his prime as a fighter, but he goes around and challenges so-called masters
Hmm.
and just stomps the crap out of them. And basically, he's a just an MMA style fighter. He's
Sure.
not a traditional Chinese martial artist, and he just wrecks these fake Bagua masters or fake
Yeah,
Tai
yeah.
Chi masters. Pretty hilarious.
Well, the thing about with music is that there's a lot more objective aspects of it that you don't have to get into a bamboo fight with somebody to know if they're good or not. Right?
Right.
We can look at pitch and relativity, tone quality, rhythm, timing, and so on and so forth that can objectively identify whether somebody actually knows how to play their instrument or not. So
Yeah, and as said in the chat there, someone mentioned there are grades in piano and violin. Aren't there grades for all the orchestral instruments? Can't you play through the books?
yeah,
The level one.
yeah, there's book series and so on and stuff like that. Not all of them have like Menkyo systems attached to it. Like the Suzuki system has an actual grading system that goes up to 9. And at the end of it, like you get to play like you're playing like concert level pieces. You're playing concertos and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean they have those too, and they pay for that. There's recitals, there's certifications and stuff, and they carry meaning too. They carry meaning as well. Like if you're a Suzuki certified teacher, that opens up the
Right.
door for a lot of jobs in the violin world, like instantly. And even if you're a doctoral student, like or a doctoral PhD in violin performance and pedagogy, right? And you're a pedagogue, but you don't have that certificate for as a Suzuki teacher, they will not take you as a teacher. You have to go and get the certification on top of your PhD because it's not enough.
Interesting. Well, I've always, you hear people, it seems like it was always just violinists or piano players, or occasionally like friends of mine who played cello that talked about, oh, I'm working on book five, or, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But it does exist for the other instruments as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, and to some of them, I mean, of course, we have a bunch of etude books for like flute and oboe, clarinet, and so on. And I'm sure they have their own. I'm just not aware of them because I never did them. I know violin and viola very well because that was my area of expertise before this. But
Sure.
that's the Menkyo system in a nutshell. Like just of what it is that we actually do have it in the West. and some people get exposed to it, other people don't. And like for you, for example, when you first started taking lessons with me, and your wife has been taking music lessons her whole life, she was like everything I
Hmm.
was saying was like, oh yeah, that's just standard practice par, whatever. That's just how it is in the
Right.
music world. And you're like, oh, okay. I'm new to the classical music world side of things, and okay, that's how things work. I understand now. But for people who had never been
Yes.
in the classical music world or any sort of classical arts of Japan, sometimes the barrier to entry is not actually even learning how to do the instrument, but actually getting your foot into the door and being accepted as a student. So,
Right.
but
And
but
yeah.
that's
So
a
for those of you out there who came into the music world the way I did, which is what we nowadays euphemistically refer to as bedroom musicians, the people who got a guitar and a chord book, and if you're a punk rock or rocker and you believe that all you need is three chords and the truth, um,
Mhm.
which is how I got started in music. You will find a lot of this stuff. It feels very foreign, and in some ways, it feels almost antithetical to what you might think music is about.
Mhm.
But it's that debate we've had before about art versus craft. And yes, it is an art, and you can talk about your feelings and be raw and open and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, there's also a craft element to it. You got to have certain foundational skills to convey the feelings that you want to convey. And I feel like this Minkyo system definitely leans on that craft side of things, where you're demonstrating that you do understand the fundamentals of your instrument.
Yeah. My first song on the guitar, by the way, was the Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
So that
Yeah,
literally is
well,
a 3 chord song. So
yeah. Well, as Lou Reed famously said, if you're using more than three chords, you're just showing off.
yeah, well, not everybody can be right. Okay, so I think we have one other questions too. Is there any
We
other
do.
question? Yeah, is there any other question, or does that cover everything that you wanted
Well,
to?
that was the four that I had written down because we kind of mashed the Menkyo question and the recital question together. I do have a hypothetical for you. Is it possible? Because by the time a person gets to doing their recital, you've already heard them play everything, and you've already made the decision that they have satisfied like the repertoire requirements
Yep.
that you expect for that level.
Yes.
Can you envision someone crashing and burning so badly at their Okuden recital that you hold the Minkyo back and say, "Wait a minute"?
Well, you have to remember that the recital's not so much for me to judge the person, but for like the community, right? It's for the community to uplift them, right? So it's a means to get people excited about their own progress and where they've come from. Because one of the things that's really nice is that we've heard people play in master classes sparingly, and you hear some people, like you guys might jump in a room or meet and then play, and then you might not hear from them for a long time, for like a year and a half or 2 years, and then you hear them at the Okuden recital and you go, wow, they've come so far, and no, almost no one's ever crashed and burned so bad that it was just like awful, right? But we've always heard that person develop and grow extraordinary, like over that period of time. And then the same thing happens from the Okuden level to the Junshihan level. Like that one level jump there is probably the most massive and distinctively big jump that happens with all of the students. So Okuden concerts, like I tell people when they do it, I said, look, it's not about actually sounding good on this one. It's about first off just gaining the experience and just showing people what you've learned, because you just started to learn music. Because up until that Okuden point, we haven't learned a single piece. And I know that might sound shocking to people, but we haven't learned a single piece. We've only studied music.
Right.
When you do that actual Okuden recital, now we learn a set of pieces and then perform them. So then, as we go on into the next book, you have a deeper understanding of what it takes to study a piece versus what it takes to learn a piece. So when we start going through the Junshihan book and we start learning all of the pieces, you approach it differently. You go deeper almost automatically. So you get so much more out of all of them, and then by the end of that, then you're a really great player, a very fine player. at the end of that. And then of course Shihan just gets more intense. And even to our current, we only have one Shihan in the entire studio, but we have people who are extraordinarily close, like Robin Tamura, who has the Shakuhachi Journey channel. I mean, he sounds incredible. It's not a Shihan yet. It doesn't have that degree in his hand. So the degree doesn't actually say anything about your playing. It only says more about fundamentals and so on and so forth. But yeah, you can be an absolutely stunning player and not have a Shihan, and you can also be just an okay player and have a Shihan as well. So that's you know to just further that difference, that it doesn't
Sure.
necessitate being a really great player.
You certainly see that in the martial arts too. I mean, I've definitely walked into judo studios, and seen the white belt who is just smoking people on the mat,
Oh
rolling,
yeah,
and you're like, who is that guy? And oh, like he's a high school wrestler. He just started doing judo, but he already knew how to wrestle. And so you definitely see that in shakuhachi sometimes too. It's the person who plays Western flute comes in, picks up the shakuhachi, and gets it really quick
yeah.
and are playing incredibly well with no ranking whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
but it's also
it's
not
yeah, it's
it's
not
not like it's so in judo especially, no one actually really cares of what the black belts do. Like no one that upper ranking stuff, no one cares about that. They care
yeah.
about like that white belt or that green belt that smoked all of the blue belts and then like lost to the last guy because they're like 15 people in, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're at the Shihan level and you have your black belt and you're sitting there in Seiza for 50 minutes, and then you get up and your legs are wobbly and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try to take down this blue belt who just beat the guy who took out 15 people. Everybody's tired. My legs are numb. No one cares about that. That's not the thing. So those events are actually way more geared towards the beginners than they are for the masters, and just in that sense, because you're not going to be fighting at your best. You have a handicap on you as you're sitting long for a longer amount of time.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the person who starts, has the biggest handicap because they're going to be worn out so much by the time that they get to person 15.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think so the TLDR here is that the Menkyo serves purposes that may not be immediately apparent especially to the Western student who's not thinking of it in the way that it's intended. And so for those folks who feel like they don't really need the Menkyo, like I understand where you're coming from, but there's also just the element of like how it affects the studio.
Yeah. Hmm.
I feel like watching other people get their mankyos is very motivating and very uplifting.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a positive way, there's also a negative side to it. I've been chasing Robin Tamura for years now. I can never catch up to where he is in the repertoire. I'm always like 3 songs behind him,
Yeah.
and it's been driving me crazy for years.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
once we get past that, then there's no new pieces. So then we can do whatever
right.
you want. Yeah, the other thing too is that there is a financial gain for the teacher, but you have to remember that
Sure.
shakuhachi teachers and performers are not like extremely wealthy people, right? You're not just rolling in bank and then just raising it up. Like maybe if you were like a Nakao Tozan, right? Then yeah, okay, yeah, you've got a lot of money rolling in because you're the soke of the largest yeah, of Shakuhachi Guild of all time. I mean, at one point they had 500,000 students, and you can imagine everybody paying their dues to their teacher, and then they're paying their dues to the Soke. Yeah, that guy's making
Wow.
bank. Okay, that he's making a lot of money. The Taidu
Yeah.
Studios, we don't we don't have that. So but what I use the money for is we use it to upgrade studio stuff. To like one of the last purchases that we just did with one of the Mankyos is that I bought Discord Nitro, right, and I upgraded it so that we could send larger file sizes to people. So we have that for the whole year. and like it's always going back into the studio to make the experience better. So it's not like, okay, well, now that I just had this student pay their $175 for their first certificate, now I can go have a nice dinner. Like, no, it's that money, it feeds right back into the system.
Yeah, and of course, even what we're looking at right now, the microphones, the cameras, that sort of stuff, the computer that you're working on, all that, comes out of Menkyo fees to like upgrade stuff.
Oh yeah,
Also,
yeah.
I don't want to give away too much behind the scenes stuff, but you wouldn't believe the amount of makeup that goes on to get Sensei on screen.
Oh,
It's
it's just
just special
oh yeah,
effects department to
yeah.
make him presentable.
Like
Yeah.
these veneers don't just pay for themselves,
How early do you have to get in the makeup chair to have the transformation into the big dragon every morning, Sean?
Well, it's whenever, when Katsuko-san just shows up, whenever she arrives, then, we're good to go, but sometimes she's late. By the way, like, also for even for like upgrading like computers and stuff, like, I was using the laptop for the same like 9 years, something like that, before upgrading, which in like,
It-
God bless her for being able to make it that long, right?
yeah,
Computer.
9 years in tech. In tech years, I believe that's 1,000 years in tech years.
Yeah,
That's
especially at the way we're traveling right now. We're traveling in light speed for stuff. Okay, I do want to open up the for the chat for people to ask questions about Shakuhachi, things that maybe even today that you heard in the live stream, or just other questions that you've had about Menkyo or pieces and stuff like that. Somebody had asked me if my wife was a koto player. My wife is not a koto player. She did play a little bit, but the kotos that you see in the back over here, there's actually there's a two regular kotos and a base koto. Two of those were gifts to me from one koto player, and then the base koto player is Tanigaki Sensei's. The koto player I always work with, so that's Tanigaki-san's, and so we're doing a concert next month, and we have a couple other concerts lined up this year that we're going to be doing. So she left one of her base kotos. Speaking of if like like a lot of studio fees, you know that like the koto players, like all the koto players that I know who are professional teachers, they own like 35 kotos. And I'm not even exaggerating that number. They actually own 35 kotos.
That's see when people talk about having a lot of equipment in your field,
Mhm.
and I used to complain all the time. I play guitar and ukulele, and I was kind of, I had what we call ukulele acquisition syndrome,
Mhm.
UAS, and I had a lot of ukes, and then most of them never came out of the case. Like they were ukes that I bought and I played for a few months and decided, no, I want the next shiny thing, and that is a problem a little bit in shakuhachi. But like to have 35 flutes as compared to have 35 kotos, I think the koto player is more broke than the shakuhachi player
Maybe not
at the
necessarily.
end of the
Well,
day.
they're broken space utilization. Maybe not necessarily in cash. There we
Yeah.
actually have the same disease in Shakuhachi. The Shakuhachi acquisition syndrome, and it's called SAS.
Yeah. We a while back we did a survey on the channel a while back asking people how many flutes they had, and it was good to see that for the most part, most people who were responding to the poll had not completely lost their mind. Like their flutes were still a single digit number.
Yes.
But then we've got some real overachievers in our community that kind of really skew the data.
Yeah.
Like if you put Raphael's numbers in there, it messes it up for everybody. The graph gets all screwed up. He's an
Mhm.
outlier.
Yeah. Like, why is it our Central American students, like even Alejandro, rest his soul, he also had like 350 flutes.
Yeah, I mean they weren't all shakuhachi, but yeah, he kind of was a collector of world flutes in general, right? Like he
Yeah.
had flutes from all over.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in his case, he was a professional flute player, so that kind of made some sense.
Yeah.
But there are hobbyists in the shakuhachi world that are just sitting on 40 flutes, and you're like, why?
Mm. Yeah, I have a
So
I've always had a very big issue with the Shakuhachi museum people. Like people who and I know some of them who own hundreds of flutes that are all like tier 1 incredible instruments, and they just sit in a storage unit. And to me it's like there's a real special place in hell for you. And it's not going to be comfortable. I think it's gonna be like, like that part of hell will just be like it's all of the shakuhachis that you owned, and they're in like a plexiglass unbreakable case, so you could never actually play them, and there's no instruments you can play.
Yeah.
All right, so Sharon has a question. Question, please. Thank you for being so polite. I'm working my way through Shoden. Should I be trying to catch each piece the best I can do before moving to the next piece? So this is where the online sort of thing falls short because you don't have a teacher to tell you when you're ready to move on to the next piece. That's one of the disadvantages of it. So you're not ever really going to be sure what is the proper level, and you can overdo a piece too. You can overdo it where it becomes destructive, and you can underdo it where it becomes not valuable enough. So one of the things that you'll have to do if you're doing this by yourself is you're going to have to record yourself and be objective but not overcritical and say, did I get everything that I need out of the piece? Not, is this piece really 100%? Am I giving this performance right now like world class Carnegie Hall ready? That should not be the goal when working through the Shoten book. It needs to be, again, did I gain and do I understand the concepts that are supposed to be understood when learning and playing this piece? If you've done that, then it's fair to move on. A lot of the times, what I tell students is somewhere between 70 to 75% is a pretty good level to have on the Shodan because you're going to miss a bunch of notes. You're going to miss rhythms. You're going to have bad tone on some things. You're going to lose sound in other places. So, overall, you'll get about 70% of it. And that's totally fine.
Yeah, it's one of the difficulties of self learning is that you don't have a person evaluating you who knows what to listen for.
Hmm.
Because I've heard lots of students say, "Oh, I don't want to move on yet. I haven't mastered this piece," and
No, yeah, well, you
that
never will.
is that, yeah, exactly. You never will. That's a recipe for failure. And
Hmm.
it's funny how when you move on from a piece, even if I've had the experience of moving on from a piece that I don't feel really good about the way I was playing it. Like you're like, I could have done better. I needed another week on that or something. And then, 6 months later, you come back to that piece and you play it really well
Hmm.
because you've acquired things from other pieces along the way.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people are misunderstanding, again, to the martial arts comparison. Do you only move on from white belt when your roundhouse kick is absolutely perfect? Of course not.
Hmm.
Like, if you waited for it to be absolutely perfect, no one would ever rank up.
Yeah, yeah, no one would ever
So,
rank up. I'm just got a flashback of when I was teaching in Texas. When I was living in Texas, my first couple of years, I taught violin and viola as well. I was also a high school orchestra director. I played in orchestras and stuff. I was still kind of in the transition from my doing the shakuhachi stuff and still being in the Western classical. I wasn't 100% converted over full time performer. And so I remember I was viewing a younger teacher who had just got a high school gig, and he was teaching violin, like private violin lessons with the student, and the poor student couldn't even get past a single note without him stopping her and fixing the hand position, and like couldn't like
oof.
stop them like after even like two notes without fixing a bow thing. And I'm like, I'm sitting there and like just like shaking in my chair and just like, just please let the girl play. Just please let the girl. She's like 5 years old, right? She's not ever going to maintain that perfect hand position of like a curved position where all the fingers are just so eloquently placed just properly above the string. Her pinky's gonna lift up off the bow. She's gonna kind of do weird things. She's gonna start to kind of grab it and have like weird bow positions. But just let the girl play. And so when I've always felt that same way about with my students is that in general, I let my students play, right? Because I know that they in the lesson, it could be I can get a lot more done if I stop them every other note and I can tell them everything that they've done wrong. But they also want to play for me, right? And I understand that they want to play for me, they want to show me everything they've worked on, and it's my duty to say, yeah, I want to hear everything that you've worked on. And once you finish, or once we get to a certain part of the piece where enough things have accumulated where I can talk about them, then I'm going to do that. But just to stop every single thing, right? And people do this to themselves too. I see them in lessons as well, where they play something. No, that's not. It's not good. And they start playing again, and I have to say, okay, get out of your own head and play the damn piece. It's gonna be okay. And then once they actually start playing and get over themselves, things actually start going a lot better. Say, forget all the
Yeah.
technique, forget all that stuff. Like the technical exercises, that's for the practice room. When you're actually going to play, all that stuff has to leave, right? It has to be second nature. But if you're constantly thinking about it, you'll never allow yourself to ever be expressive when you play. You're going to be locked into this cage.
Yeah, it's I had a teacher in university who talked about how there are some subjects that you learn in a sort of logical progression like mathematics where you learn the rules and you apply those rules going forward, right?
Mhm.
And then there are some subjects that you learn by accretion, like accretion is a term that you hear a lot in geology. It's the process where single drops of water eventually create the Grand Canyon over a long period of time.
Mhm.
And actually, that's the opposite of accretion. Accretion is when you make like stalactites and stalagmites. Single drops of water depositing small amounts of minerals eventually make a stalactite.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like playing a musical instrument is much more a process of accretion. Yes, maybe your melody note is not what it should be, and it won't be what it should be for months or years, but
Yeah.
eventually it will be if you keep moving. But if you get
Mhm.
rooted there and wait for that melody note to happen, you're really harming your overall progress.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. I see a
Um,
really interesting question here about what do you feel the shakuhachi gives us? Like, we don't have time. That's a weighty question,
yeah.
but
Um,
I think maybe can we do like just in 20 words or less? What does the shakuhachi give us?
yeah. I can. I was thinking about that actually before you read it, and um, nothing and everything, right? It just depends on what you want it to give you, right? Because it's an inanimate object that doesn't do anything until you put your breath into it. So the shakuhachi only gives you as much as you give it.
That's good. I was gonna say what the shakuhachi gives you is what I think every human needs, which every human being needs a practice.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you because whatever your practice is, be it golf or yoga or Call of Duty, whatever it is that is your practice, it gives a spine to your life. It gives a form to your day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the shakuhachi is one of the better forms that you
Mm-hmm.
could attach your day to. But
Well,
everybody needs some kind of practice.
as Eric has also highlighted, though, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. So with that,
Yes.
why don't you take us out today?
All right. So, thank you for being here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video. And when you hit the subscribe button, you got to hit the drop down button and hit the real subscribe button, which is the little bell icon. So you get all the notifications and keep you up to speed with everything that's going on in Taidu Studios. Honestly, you got to pay attention because Sean's like over there grinding out videos all the time. And don't forget to join us over on Discord if you want to continue this kind of conversation. It's not always this philosophical. We also share a lot of memes and a lot of silliness. And in the meantime, row for 10.